Today, we look at some strategy and trades ahead of round 10. A bit of a shorter one, so let's get right into it. Our aim this week is making upgrades and improving our buy structures. The first thing you need to do, though, is go through your team and count the number of premiums and rookies on each buy. I said this last week, but I just did it properly, and it was very insightful. For example, I found out I have barely anyone on the round 15 buy, whereas rounds 12 and 16 are quite packed. So that's just something you really need to think about and very important. So we'll get into some targets now. And the thing is, everything is really team dependent. Like I'd highly recommend Harry Sheasel as an option, but 99% of teams are packed on the early buy already, with popular guys like Zeri, TDK, Daniel, Rosie, Sarah, and Horn Francis already on it. So today, instead of going through lines, I'll go through buys, and skipping round 12 for the reasons I just said. In round 13, we have some really good options. I'll start with Wanganeen Malera, who I feel like I talk about every video. He's averaging 105 this year, and priced not too far off that now. However, he has a really good run, at least in his next three: West Coast, Gold Coast, and Melbourne. A good safe pick with the chance of ceiling scores. If you want to see my best 22, just a reminder that you can become a super sub member on YouTube, or if you just want to show some extra support, I have 2 levels you can choose from and help me out even more. Then another saint is Jack Sinclair. He's priced really cheap now after having a down year, averaging 95. I think he's an option and has the same good option. However, I think Sinclair is one I'd rather target after his buy in round 14 because he'll get even cheaper. And there's also Philippou, who came back last week and scored 73, playing as a forward, but I think he's going to move into the mid soon, especially with the Saints struggling. When he does, he will score well. Against the Saints might be that opportunity, although there could be risks of him being a sub. For the Dockers, you have the duo in Luke Ryan and Jordan Clark, who went big last week as we saw the Dockers change their game plan to that chip marking that we saw last year. However, they lost consistently, so who knows if it will stick. I think both could be good options now, but my problem is that they have the Giants and Port in their next two, and that's far from good. Still, they could be some pods who are way underpriced. I'd probably go Ryan if I had to pick one. And I also like Luke Jackson, who will be solo rucking with Darcy out, and probably for a good while. We know he can average high 90s to 100 when solo. And also I think he might be a nice way to get off TDK without having to spend up. Moving on to round 14, I think Josh Dacos is still an option and should bounce back, but there's probably better options. You've got some of the Suns guys who could be pods. I don't mind Anderson, and interestingly, when they play in Darwin, he usually has a bad first game, and then goes big, so could be unique and very good pick, but extremely risky. Callum Mills might be back soon, and you've got Chad Warner too for Sydney, but as I've said a few times, I'm just not a fan of him in fantasy. If you want him, go for it, but I won't encourage you. Now let's move on to the round 15 buy, where I'm struggling. I've got Petraka and Rankin and nobody else. Dawson is popular, so I may need to try to pick him up soon, but it's a pretty empty buy. I know people are looking at James Peatling, and maybe that's not so bad with the lack of options. He's still priced under 800,000 and just scored 117, but that did require 12 tackles. I still wouldn't recommend him, but he might not be awful. There's also CJ for the Hawks, who I got a lot of comments about, and my answer is pretty much no. He's had 2 tons, but seriously, do we expect him to replicate this every week? Number? They've been 2 of his best games ever, and while it's great to see, I doubt he can keep it up. And then we move on to round 16, where there are lots of good options, many of which I already have. In the backline, Dane Zorko is a great target. Priced under 105, he's back and could put up some huge scores in his next few games. The only flag I have would be around Coleman, and if he comes back, what that does to Zorko's role. There's also Whitfield and Ash, who I have. I'm waiting for Ash to give me a good score again, but Whitfield is always going to be a good option if you can afford him. Sticking with the Giants is Tom Green, who I've recommended for a while now, and you can still jump on before he gets more expensive. We know he can average around that 110 mark, so there's over 5 points of potential upside there. Then we have Nick Martin, who I had last week for that big 140. There's a reason I got him. He is capable of scoring huge and is still well underpriced. He has a decent run, but not great. Still, if you are in need of a premium forward, he's your guy, I reckon. Other options include Max Holmes, who had that big score after a bad run. He's really cheap priced around 90, and we know he can score way better than that. He is playing Port this week though, and he is very capable of dropping bad scores. He's also probably the guy who gets tagged at Geelong, even over Bailey Smith. And there's obviously guys like Dunkley who you can definitely get there too. For the trades outs, there's an obvious one. I'm making this part a bit later, so I didn't get into it, but Tom de Koning had been confirmed out for Friday night, so he needs to go. There's not really a way he can be held. And just on that, the guys you are looking to bring in instead are Zeri, Marshall and Jackson too. He hasn't been good for us anyway, and needed to go at some point, but he's got a larynx injury or something and could be a while out. Must trade him. Then that leaves guys like Short and Daniel as luxury moves, but they can both definitely go. However, I'd lean towards holding. If Short plays, he will be okay and won't drop too much cash. And Daniel has Richmond, so he should score well there and bounce back. One who I would trade is Clayton Oliver because a 40 from him is awful, and it doesn't look like getting better anytime soon. Apart from these guys, it's really just upgrading rookies. Riley Bice is the perfect one, I think. Plenty of cash on his head, and his price is going down. Get off him and try to make an upgrade. So for my trades, what I was looking at is trading Bice and Lindsay out. I had some cash banked and would have been able to get Wanganeen Malera or someone around that price. However, with this TDK injury, I've had to change it up unfortunately. I'm now looking at going de Koning to Jackson and Bice to Filippo. But that leaves me banking $175,000, which is annoying because I've banked cash like the last 5 weeks and that's free points I'm missing. I could also get Marshall, but I don't love the run. I suppose Jackson also has Wits coming up though. Or I could trade someone else, like Lindsay, but I don't think I will. Beforehand, I was considering Luke Ryan, Jordan Clark, and actually Noah Anderson as a sneaky one. In his second game at TIO Stadium last year, he scored 142 after an 80, and also scored 154 against the Hawks who he's playing. Just putting it out there. But now I can't do this. I also can't trade in Cooper Simpson, and he was the rookie I really wanted, but oh well. Anyway, this all leaves me needing to field Lindsay again, although I'll use some DPP to hopefully loop Cleary on if he scores well. Now, let's do some captains, which haven't been great the last few weeks, but hopefully we do better now. So on Thursday, the only guy you'd consider would be Anderson. Friday, there's no one I like. Jordan Dawson against Collingwood is a good VC. We've also got to consider Bailey Smith against Port because he had a bad matchup last week and almost went 150. In the same game, Butters and Rosie also options. In the Giants game, of course, you have Whitfield and Green, and maybe also Ryan and Clark who you could think about. And on Saturday night, Bont, Merritt, and maybe Martin could be good options. And Tim English against Goldstein might be one too. I'm interested in our options on Sunday, however. Against Richmond, Sheasel and Zeri, surely go huge. Especially Zeri. I could see a score well over 150 coming from him, and he will be my captain. And for the Lions, Zorko and Dunkley will be great. And in the final game, you could think about captaining the Wang. So there's a lot of good options this week. I think I'll be going Bailey Smith into Tristan Zeri, but my line will be quite high. I almost want to say I want a 120 to take Smith's score just because I don't want to miss Zeri. There's a world where I loop Zeri into Zorko instead, which gives me a better look at it. But anyway, that's going to be all for today. But I'll try to answer your comments as always.